I'm in the garden of Goethe's birth house in Frankfurt, and if I find my notebook, I'll just read something from his autobiography, Dichtung und Wahrheit, Poetry and Truth, more precisely on his recounting of his birth. It was on the 28th of August 1749 at the stroke of 12 noon that I came into the world in Frankfurt on the Main. The constellation was auspicious. The sun was in Virgo and at its culmination for the day. Jupiter and Venus looked amicably upon it, and Mercury was not hostile. Saturn and Mars maintained indifference. That's good news. Only the moon, just then becoming full, was in a position to exert adverse force, because its planetary hour had begun. It did indeed resist my birth, which did not take place until this hour had passed. These good aspects, which Aristotle chose in later years, taught me to value very highly, but probably responsible for my survival, for the midwife was so unskilled that I was brought into the world as good as dead. And only with great difficulty could I be made to open my eyes and see the light. Goethe, like almost no one else in the modern period, is capable of weaving together the loss of unity with antiquity, to put it simply, with a regeneration of unity or unification, which is also reflected on all levels of his own existence. What to others may have been mere contingency, the facts of one's birth, the conditions of one's birth, etc., are to Goethe already not prophecy, but something that foresees his fate and his destiny. Born dead, or nearly dead, almost dead, proclaimed dead, presumed dead at birth, he begins his life with also a clarity that it is indeed finite, and that it is indeed there then to create, that one is there to create. But also, if you look at his notion that it's important how the stars aligned on his day, what the moon is doing, what Jupiter is up to, and what also good old trickster Hermes or Mercury is up to. We can see that from the beginning in his recounting of his life in poetry and truth. Dichtung und Wahrheit, by the way, is a German idiom which shall clearly distinguish between poetry and truth. They usually don't go together, and Goethe plays with this. But he doesn't play with it in a sense that he wants to lie. Instead, and this is coming back now to what I said before, how on different levels of his existence, of his life, he is able to weave together what occurs to him and give it poetic significance and make it draw sense and meaning out from it, and show that it has indeed a greater, let's say, cosmic purpose. Goethe is capable of weaving together what might be considered pure contingency by others in such a way that it is no longer contingent, but instead it becomes its own mythopoetic truth, which is presumably also why he from a very young age is capable of seeing himself as the poet of the Germans. And going forward, for us, I think Goethe must be regenerated also. He must be discovered, not for the first time, but rediscovered in a sense, not just as the poet of the Germans and then fetishized as such, but instead as a man of modernity who is capable of weaving together the deep memory that we have from antiquity, the unity of the cosmos, with the contingency and arbitrariness that it seems at times, and the bursting apart of the cosmos, so that we can find in Goethe, perhaps also just by his own life, by the way he lived, because he was a greatly talented statesman, and also in charge, for example, of the in Weimar, of the mining industry that didn't really go anywhere in Weimar. But so he had to apply himself. He had to find his ways in different areas. He was a theater director, as you may know, and also happened to be one of the greatest poets to ever roam the earth. So we can see here a well-rounded individual who is a individual in becoming. It's nothing to do with a crude individualism, but an individual which we can still be. We need not listen to crazy leftists who do the bidding of capital and think that we are at best individuals and could just as well give up and be consumers. Instead, to be a genuine Goethean individual in his spirit would mean to be able to bring together one's disparate drives and talents in such a way that they do form overall a certain wholeness without becoming a finalized totality. And I think, again, Goethe is exemplary of this. And without going into too much detail here now, we can find in his work, in his continuation of what Kant began in the third critique, the critique of the power of judgment, we can find in Goethe ways of not overcoming modernity, but finding new entry points into it, and also our relationship to the past. We need not all be just Dr. Faustus, Dr. Faust, to use the Goethean name for him, Johannes Faust, the Faustian man who ultimately destroys the relationship with the past and is a purely tragic figure. So again, Goethe, the baby born, proclaimed dead, fights his way by help of the sun back to life and is able to become one of the greatest men to ever live. We shall follow his footsteps.